able to really know people. I was out late at night.
Friends, please join me in welcoming back to the stage the incredible director of Dìdi, Sean Wong. Also joining us on stage is production designer Han Ray Wong, who is coming up to the audience. And we have two incredible producers with us. Please welcome Valerie Bush and
Jesse Fairbanks.
Oh yes, hi. All right. Let me center myself back in this. I hope you all had a good time. So while I'm vamping and getting recentered because we've been bouncing around, what I would really like to know is who came up with the ET impression?
Isaac.
Did he?
Yeah, I remember I had this very specific thing. You should inhale when you should go like he went, and I was like, that's great. I remember Sam actually was like, I think he's actually getting a pretty good ET. Like it passes the test.
No, this is the thing. People, I think, argue about whether or not that is an accurate ET
Yeah.
sound. Obviously, we know what Maddie was going for, but yeah. So, Sean, you said this film took 7 years to make, that you really wanted to make a story that was reminiscent of the films you grew up watching. You mentioned that in the intro. And you did screenwriting fellowships at both SF Film and Sundance. Can you talk to us about developing the script and specifically about the dialogue? Because there's some pretty spicy dialogue in there that is very genre, age specific.
Yeah, well, I mean, I hope you guys like the movie. Thanks for staying for the Q&A. I think from the get-go, it was always wanting to make a portrait of adolescence that wasn't watered down, that was an honest portrait of adolescent boyhood. And I think we thought, like, an honest portrait is a messy portrait, and especially set during that time, it's not always correct in today's standards, but we wanted to be honest and make a movie that was sort of without judgment and had the kids talk how they would talk. Obviously there was a line, there was a barometer. We didn't want to be indulgent with it, but I felt like if we're gonna talk about the themes of shame within a sort of cultural context and personal context and societal context, we have to show the ugly sides of what culture was like. And so that was kind of the North Star was, you know, and we were very carefully, that was always actually one of the biggest things. Like, is the language, does it ever feel gratuitous? Because we didn't want to be gratuitous with it. But we wanted it to feel honest. We wanted them to talk how kids talked. And so that was the hope, yeah. And the kids brought a lot of their own energy to it as well. Not in the sense of like cursing, but just like, hey, take the words on the page. And our bet was being 13 then and being 13 now, the context is way different, obviously, but the way kids talk and like how they banter with one another is the same. So it was like, if something doesn't feel right, like change it, make it yours. And they really did that with every single page, basically.
And then in terms of developing the script, like at what point did you, like when did it feel like it was really gelling? You're like, okay, I have this idea, maybe I have the narrative spine, I have this North Star, but like when did it really feel like, what was the element that kind of slotted into place where you're like, now I understand how the story's going to unfold?
Sorry.
we don't need additional commentary right now.
Was that the transcription? Well, it's funny. I mean, it was three things, and I'm not just saying this because we're SF Film, but it was from the beginning. It was always like, what if we took Stand By Me but had it star kids who looked and talked and felt like the kids that I grew up with? And what I love about Stand By Me is that you never really see the parents. And I was like, we should make this movie that's like a suburban wasteland. You never see the parents. But then, as I was working on it, I was like, I feel like it's missing something. And it was the family, and I really wanted to write about my mom, especially. I was like, I don't know why, but and at that time I had made a couple of shorts that were, like one was about my relationship with my mom and when I moved to New York, and it was like chronicled by my mom's voicemails. And I made another short that was like about how my sister became a mom and my mom became a grandma, and that's just for like generations of motherhood. And then even at work, I was making stuff for Mother's Day, and I was like, what? I'm not the mom filmmaker. I don't want to do this. And then this script was like, dude, I think you want to write about your mom. Oh my God. And I was like, like, let me just jump down this tunnel and see if there's something potent there. And I was like, oh fuck, this is a mother-son story encased in the trappings of a movie like Stand By Me. And so once I realized that was the sort of eureka moment of like, that's the movie, I just have to go there, then it became like, you know, making it that movie. And then I remember I got the Sundance Ignite Fellowship in 2020. We pitched the movie, and all these advisors who are filmmakers I really love, they were like, send us the script, we want to help you. And I was like, oh fuck, I gotta make that version good. And that really, by the end of that year, I was like, this movie is not makeable yet, but I think it's indicative of the movie I want to make. And then I applied to SF Film, and I got in the screenwriting grant. And then that, I think 6 months of the screenwriting grant basically got me to a point where I was like, if someone believes in this film, like it's never gonna be perfect, but if someone is willing to give me the money to make this movie, I will make this. And that's when Carlos came on board, and then shortly after Josh and Valerie, and then that, you know, was entered the development phase basically, and then that became the journey of kind of getting this movie off the ground, while still, you know, again, making it more specific.
I'm gonna be curious about your next project, that, you know, if there's a mom element in it. Henri, I want to ask about the production, the specificity. Oh, that's not the way you say it. Thank you. Specificity.
Thank you, Pete Lee.
Really need you up here, Pete Lee. It's been a long day. The specificity of the, like, even the living rooms, like not just the home of Chris Wang, like the homes of like where the friends are partying, like the curtains, everything was like familiar. It was so specific to that time frame. And so I'm just curious, you know, talk to us a little bit about building these sets and putting together this world.
I think our goal is we want to show in the woman's house, we want to show the difference with outside the house. That also can help understand the conflict inside the woman. So that's why he has the identity confused. So like for example, like the party house, and we put a wallpaper everywhere. That's make him feel more nervous because flower wallpaper everywhere. Also, next party, and we find like grandma house. So we like the idea. We mess around the grandma's house, like has like a funny big contrast. That's also it's kind of lucky fun.
Hence the curtains and the like brown big wooden kitchen table and all the things.
Yeah, all those details has like a big contrast with Wawa's house. Wawa's house, like you can see a little bit like the Asian details, or like Nana's corner. You see like Nana's reading Chinese newspaper, those details, and has big contrast with like a pool party house. So that's from visual, you can feel how Wawa's feel from like from his house to outside, like outside. When he faces outside, he has like sometimes like struggle or confusing, so we can feel that.
I want to ask you about the skateboards. I hear you had a lot of fun putting together some
Very
of this.
fun.
You know, it was really fun, obviously, to see the shots of Wang or Chris filming himself and then trying to become a filmmaker. But I'm just curious, how many skateboards were on set, and how great was it for you to source those skateboards? Tell us more.
Sean, we have so many conversations about skateboards. I was curious, in this movie about skaters, because Sean is a big fan of skaters, so he has so specific requirements, like all stickers and skateboard. Even in Wawa's room, I have so many stickers for Wawa's room, and he told me, oh, Wawa won't use this sticker, won't use this for Sue, this for someone else, and then he know each like brand for a different character.
What kind of skater they are?
Yes. Also for the boards. Also.
We had so many boards, and like they skated their actual boards, and they had to skate in the movie. And she had all these decks that were like, you know, used. And then I was like, we have to get another board for the skater. And she's like, we have 20 boards. I was like, this is waterlogged. I can't skate this. And so she was like, how many more boards do you want?
Yeah, my prom master keeps telling me like, oh, we need to get new boards.
I want to go back to talking about the lamps and about like what's in the houses. Yeah, why all these skateboards? Well, the sense of place is just so prominent, and huge congratulations to you because you really feel like you're in a home. Valerie and Josh, Sean just kind of talked us up to the point of when he had gone through some of the screenwriting labs and both of you came on. Valerie, you've obviously shot in Fremont before, working with Babak Jalali's film Fremont, which was at the festival last year. Just gonna pump that up. And I'm just curious, because I think, the Fremont connection was what brought you to this project, but I'm just curious, what were kind of the opportunities and challenges that you were presented with on this production that you hadn't encountered before when shooting Fremont?
Well, my previous film, Fremont, was a totally different film. That film, I mean, we have crew members here that worked on it, and they can attest
Not
to
Stoop. Boards.
Matt, this film, Dìdi, and also Fremont. Yeah, I mean, it was totally different. That film was very much like sitting and talking, and the characters all existing in like singular places. I think that challenge-wise, this film, Dìdi specifically, was probably more with the working with the children. Logistically, that presents a lot of challenges. Our child actors were awesome. They were all like really great, not only super professional, but also like super fun and talented. But it just, when the entire film stars Isaac, who's a minor, that creates challenges as far as scheduling goes. There's a lot of moments throughout the film that hopefully you guys didn't notice, but it is a body double.
It's me.
Sometimes it's Sean.
Do talk us through this.
Sometimes, every once in a while, we would, what they call it is pumpkining on a child, as Cinderella turns into the pumpkin or whatever.
The pumpkin.
Yeah. Sean replaces Isaac when Isaac pumpkins. And yeah, it would be like the back of his shoulder or something like that. And a lot of we did have an actual double that was more Isaac's size, but a lot of the times Sean would just be the person that could improv with the cast the best because he knew what they wanted. So yeah, that's something that we.
I'm in like half this. I want to tell you guys a story, but it might ruin the movie for you. The last scene where they're just looking at each other, we shot Isaac's coverage first, and I spent like so long shooting that because I was like, this is the last shot of the movie, we have to nail it. And then we shot his coverage, and then we lost him. So I put on his clothes, and then I'm the one looking at Joan. She's looking at me, and then I'm just like staring at her. And I'm like, this is great, Joan, just like touch my It's great, just say Dìdi, I love you.
Literally like directing while he's sitting.
And then she'd kind of like brush my hair and be like, that's great.
I mean, really, there's like no uncharted territory now. Like you wrote, you directed, then you are starring it. So you're set, you're ready. You understand all this.
There's one shot that it's not even like my shoulder, it's literally me. And I was just like, I had to get the slouch right, and they were like, "You can't do that. They're gonna." I'm like, "This is near the end of the movie. I'm kind of out of focus. If people think it's me, we made a bad movie." And we were there at the monitor, and I was like, "How's my slouch?" And they're like, "More." And I'm like, total in a wide shot, just me walking across the frame.
Okay, no cheating if you weren't on the phone, but did anyone suspect that they were watching Sean when they thought they were watching Isaac as Chris?
No.
Put your hand down. No, just kidding.
That you would know. Okay, Josh, I want to chat a little bit about, like, there's such a particular energy around this film. We just had a lovely Q&A with some of the cast members. You have all talked so beautifully and eloquently about, like, the in-kind and the generosity and what it's like filming here in the community that you grew up in Fremont. But Josh, I was curious if you could chat a little bit about the finances on this film and what it was like to bring people on board to throw their weight behind an unknown talent, and with kind of, Joan being the only kind of name that might have popped them, and what directives Sean might have given you about how to kind of build these relationships with these executive producers and financiers?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. I think in any walk of life or any business, you want to know who you're working with, and I think, and sort of what they're about. And I think in meeting Sean for half an hour, you immediately become very protective of him, and also want to help him spread his wings, for lack of a better term. So I think all of us very quickly were like, we don't want people in this ecosystem that he's created and that we are collectively creating to tarnish this thing that we think we can make that might be special. We think it has a good shot to be special. And I think part of it is making a movie for a certain price where, to some degree people leave you alone if you're responsible with their money and don't take too much of it. But also I think from a financier perspective, I think Valerie, Carlos, and I knew very early on that if we could just get him in a room with someone, they're going to say yes. And that is not something that is very common. And when you know it, you know it. And so that for us, that was a little bit about that. And Sean was very good about saying like, cool, but like, they know what these people are about. Because this is the type of movie that I'm making. And while we will say we shot this movie over 25 days, he had been preparing for this moment for 7 years. So that is equally inspiring and also intimidating, right? Because you sit back and you're like, man, I've been praying for so long and I only got this amount of time, but he was so ready for that moment, and I think that came across very quickly to anybody that wanted to invest in this thing. And we were very careful. We didn't want to take too much money from one person, because when you take money from one source, that person, if you don't know who they are, can assert themselves in ways that you may not agree with. So it was very much a meritocracy and split. I mean, like, the way we structured this financing was that everyone sort of on equal playing field and was in support of the vision that Sean had over these 7 years. So.
Thank you. I have a lot of more questions for all of you, but I know there's a lot of people in here that know you better than me, so I'd love to throw this out to the audience for questions. And I can keep vamping if none of you have questions. I see a hand.
How did you come to select Isaac, the younger you? He was astonished as an actor.
That's a
Come to select.
great question. I'd love to expand upon it a little bit. So the question is about how Sean found Isaac Wong, but I'd love to just expand upon the casting in general. Like, how did you get Joan? How did you find some of the others? So if you could please answer about Isaac and then tell us more.
Yeah, I'll try not to ramble, but Isaac was one of the first kids that we saw, actually, and he had worked with one of our producers, Carlos Lopez Estrada, on Raya and the Last Dragon. And initially, like, if I'm being honest, I was like, oh, but he's acted before, and he was like a child actor. And I was kind of nervous. I was like, oh, is he too trained? But the first Zoom that you have with him, he's just kind of like, hey, what's up, man? And I'm like, okay, cool. And so he had this perfect blend of a trained actor who understood an emotional arc and understood beats and understood not to step on people's lines. But I think we also found him at a time in his life and his career where he was like, he was really craving to just be a real kid. He loves acting, but he was also like, I just want to spend my summer biking with my friends. Like, I don't want to be on Clifford or something. No shade to Clifford, but like he just wanted to kind of, he was 14 or 15 when we shot it. I think he was just like, I spent my entire childhood on set. I want to be a kid, and I think we were able to give him this playground where we're like, all the things you've learned about acting, throw it away and be a kid. And we surrounded him with everyone in this cast, I think, except Isaac in that sort of adolescent world, is a first-time non-actor. Found by our casting directors, just sort of flipped every stone at skate parks, basketball camps. And so he became friends with all these like real kids, and was just, the first 10 days we shot was all in that sort of like, there was none of the family stuff because Joan was in China. And so he just got to hang out with a bunch of kids for 10 days, and he was like, this is amazing. And then Joan comes in, and then he's like, oh, I get to flex my like actor muscles now. And so I think he just had that perfect mix that we were looking for, of just someone who could lead a movie, like you could trust him with a 90-minute movie, but also someone who would just like play and kind of mess around and be silly and goofy. And she's Joan Chen, but I think the somehow spoiled version of this is like, I think we sent her the script, and I got on a Zoom with her, and I didn't have Zoom Pro at the time. And so she spent like the first 20 minutes trying to figure out how to turn on the camera. And it was perfect. It's kind of like my mom. Yeah. And then we chatted for like another 15 minutes, and then we got kicked off the Zoom. And I was like, I don't really know how that Zoom works. And then we got a text from her manager. I was like, Joan loves Sean. She wants to do the movie, but she wants to like you know, she wants to like meet him in person too. So I was like, I think she wants to do the movie, but I'm not sure if she does. And then I met her in person, and she basically put the ball in my court, which was like, I want to do the movie. I want you to want me to do the movie because I think I might be too old for the part. And I was like, yeah, you should do the movie, of course. And then she's like, okay, great. And I was like, all right, great, let's do this. So like, a first-time director never gets that luxury of choice from someone like Joan Chen. So she, and I think it's kudos to her as a director and as a filmmaker, she was like, I love the story, I want to protect the story, and I want you to make sure I'm the right person for the story. And if you think I'm the right person for the story, I will go there with you. And we got, like, the coffee ended, and I texted her a minute later. I was like, I think you're the right person for the story.
Do you want to add something, Jack?
No, I mean, I think what I was gonna say is that Sean called me after he got kicked off the Zoom. It's like, I don't think that went very well, guys. And it's proof that like there was a connection that was established there. I think it's just to Sean's point, it happened very organically. But I remember that moment we were like, and we were kind of like, should we pay? Should production pay for Zoom Pro? Because you guys all know, like, the 10-minute countdown starts. You're like, oh, we better wrap this up. We're getting somewhere. So.
Kind of a tool, actually. Like,
Yeah,
I think now
it
none of us
is.
should
Well,
have Zoom
sometimes
Pro.
it's a benefit. Sometimes, in this case, it was not. But it ended up working out. So.
We have time for one more question. Yes, quick hand.
How come one loves filmmaking, but he didn't see all the film that Maddie mentioned?
Question. Okay, so how come Wang Wang is, saying that he's a lover of film, wants to become a filmmaker, but then doesn't bother to like prepare for his date with Maddie and know the films that she likes?
Well, I think one thing I wanted to try to capture in this movie was this generation of kids who like were filming stuff, putting it on YouTube. Like, I don't know that Wang Wang knows that he wants to be a filmmaker. I think he records stuff and puts it on YouTube, and he's like, I like doing this. And I think we grew up with this generation that like we started to record things, and I think, you know, speaking for myself, but like a lot of the films that were mentioned in the movie, I didn't see those until I was like in my late teens because my immigrant parents didn't know what those movies were. They weren't like films that we watch, like when you turn 8 years, I'm gonna show you E.T. They were like, you gotta, like my mom had like 4 copies of Brokeback Mountain unopened because she loved Ang Lee. Right? So I didn't grow up with those films. I had to like learn about those films on my own later. But and this is just me speaking personally, but I do think, you know, a lot of the kids in this movie grew up to be a lot of the people in this room, and like we grew up during this time that we were like filming stuff and like we were inspired by Jackass, and we were like recording stuff, putting it on YouTube, but not being like, I'm doing this because I want to be a filmmaker. It was just like, oh, this is fun. And I think he was just like, I think for Wang Wang it is a little bit more of that, where like he's just like, oh, this is fun. I don't know what this is exactly, but his mom is obviously like, oh yeah, Ang Lee. And so that's my answer.
I want you to wrap us out with how people can find out more about the film, but first I'm just curious, we've talked a little bit about this being your first feature debut, and we're looking forward to what comes next. I'm just curious, you know, there was probably a lot that you were nervous about or didn't know about, or maybe upon reflection was like, oh, I mean, whatever. But what were you so excited to film, and what ended up being a real joy?
The mailbox explosion. That was fun because I got to hold the camera, and we stitched 3 shots together to make 1 shot, and so the only shot that Isaac did was the one where he flips it on himself. But we have this great behind the scenes shot of Isaac just sitting there, and he's like, and then the mailbox explodes, and I run by wearing his clothes. That, and I mean, that was really fun. That was our last day of the shoot too.
Remember when you didn't want to film that on the Alexa?
Oh, yeah. We were like, I mean, you should say this already.
Well, the whole point of that scripted is that it's on a Handycam and it's not on a cinema camera. And I was like, we are not paying all this money and not shooting it on Alexa. I don't care if we don't use it, but we're gonna have it on Alexa. And we ended up using it in the film.
Yeah. But that was really fun. There were a lot of really fun moments. I won't say all of them.
Well, I'm so sorry that we don't have more time, but thank you all for coming out for the opening night. And then Sean, if you could please tell everybody about like how to find out more about the film and what's happening next for Dìdi.
Yeah, so if you like the movie, our movie comes out this summer, July 26th, in theaters, thanks to Focus Features, who are releasing the movie out of Sundance and doing a worldwide theatrical release. But a lot of how independent film works is the opening weekends of when a movie comes out are like the most important metrics and their box office success. It determines how much a studio puts into the marketing, you know, leading up into the few months afterwards. And so if you like this movie, please tell your friends about it. When the movie comes out, support us in the box office. We really made the bet that like a 13-year-old Asian American boy and his story is worthy of the big screen experience, not a streaming service. And so I think when you buy a ticket to this movie, you're really telling the executives who greenlight movies that these movies are the types of movies that they should be making bets on. And so, as I said, please, like, tell your friends, show up at the box office. It really makes a difference.
Thank you so much for making it. Congratulations.